Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Parcel Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm continuing with my tarot and oracle collections videos, and we're gonna have a look at all of my Far East or Eastern, let's say, inspired themed decks. Oh, and there's also going to be an unboxing. So the first deck that I want to show you today is a very special deck, and this was also a very beautiful gift from a wonderful person. This is the Asipaya, and it's the Asipaya is the concept of a crystal floral essence card. Now this deck is has been produced and published in China, and as you can imagine, the guidebook is also in Chinese. I have to say though, I have tried for a few of these pages to use the Google Translate, and it works like a charm. Like it's actually very easy. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about, because it's very easy nowadays to just copy paste the text itself when it's been translated into English. I'm actually thinking into transferring that into like a booklet and then printing it out. And so I'll have my own translation of the guidebook, which is very, very interesting. As I said, I had the possibility to have a look at a few of these. So these are all herbal essences, basically. But the very interesting thing is that all of these have been, these are photos. Let me show you the deck because it might be just much easier to show you the deck instead. So it comes with this really beautiful, luxurious velvet pouch, embroidered. And the deck reminded me, so the first time I saw it, let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, much better. So the first time I saw it, it reminded me of those kaleidoscopes thingies that I was using when I was a kid. And there were tubes with some glitter on, like paillettes, or how do you call them, sequin inside at the bottom. And then because there were a lot of mirrors, and you could actually turn the bottom of this tube. And by looking inside it, there was this play and game of mirror reflecting on the glitter or the satin, the sequin that was at the bottom. And it gave you, and each and every time, because of the disposition of the mirrors, it just gave you a different kind of image, and all of them looked as if they were reflecting an image down an axis of 5 directories. I hope that's the right terminology, but in this case it is exactly what is being done in a photographic process, in which there is a photo, and then it has been multiplied and reflected, and almost as if it had been flipped a couple of times, mirror flipped a couple of times. I believe that's the correct term. And it's really beautiful. But what I really like, one thing is very important, there is the English name on each and every card that refers back to the flower itself. For example, this is rhododendron, etc., white peony. I find that this deck is very, very helpful whenever you want to meditate. It is very conducive of a kind of a very relaxed kind of state of mind, where you can really access the deep levels of consciousness. If you're used to meditate, it depends on what doctrines you follow when you meditate. Of course, there's many different ones. If you do yoga and you meditate in yoga, you will find that most of the time the yogi will require you to, or ask you or suggest that you just relax your mind, and you probably also, either you close your eyes, or what works for me, which might not work for others, I actually set my eyes onto a distinct point, like a meter and a half ahead of me. And I just, relax my eyelids, and I try and slow down my breathing. And that is the status for me that works best to achieve this kind of the meditation. But I actually find that looking at these images had the same effect. So once you stop trying and work out, for example, the dynamics of a photo, the settings of how it has been achieved, or what kind of flower this is. For example, this is an hydrangea. Once you use this deck a couple of times, you will remember what this is, what flower this is, and that's the best time in which you can actually let yourself be lifted out of the card, if that makes sense, and just relax. And that's something that I really do appreciate, because I don't have that many decks that actually help me doing that. And what I wanted to show you is something that I find was very successful: meditation with this deck and a deck that I only just recently acquired, which is this one, the Yokai Meditation Tarot by Daniel Norman. And this deck is the whole concept of this deck, and this is also using photography with a slight manipulation. So the concept of this deck is that whenever we go out for a walk in a relaxing environment, that walk can be conducive of meditation. And that's exactly the way I use it. So when I use these two together, it actually, sorry, this is upside down. It actually works like a charm. It's a very beautiful way to achieve that state of peace, peaceful relaxation. And you just look, if you do what you need to do. So in my case, sometimes I need to look inward. Sometimes I just let my mind drift wherever it wants to go. Sometimes it is impossible for me. I am not at that level in which I can actually shush completely my mind. That doesn't happen for me. I've heard of people achieving that, and I admire them, because I would love to be able to do that. And perhaps there's something, you know, I should probably meditate a lot more, because whenever you try something and it doesn't work, then you have to try again, of course, in order to achieve it. But there is a time in which, after so many years of yoga, that I kind of know what my limits are, and I accept them, because we're not all the same. I will never be able to be a top yogi, and I don't even think that concept exists in a way, because I think that it's mostly you achieve the top when yoga is the practice that helps you to live a more conscious and aware life. And that's, you know, whether it's at level 10 or level 6, you know, it all depends on us. Ashtanga for me is something that I look at, I admire it, I applaud it, but I would never be able to do it. And that's okay. But this is the same for meditation. Sometimes it's a good meditation when you achieve what you want. If you want to achieve some kind of peace of mind, especially in a busy day that we're having, in a busy lives that we're having, when we actually achieve that, it's a win-win, because it is obviously very helpful for us, and it brings us back that energy that we probably lost. So these two together are really great for this. And I wanted to show you another combo that I tried out with this deck and the Osho Tarot. So I think it's called the Osho Zen, is it, Tarot? Apologies for that. This is the usual one, and I'll show you now. So I don't have the box anymore because my copy is very old, as you can see from the damage on the edges. This copy has been used a million times because it's a deck that I actually studied more and more when I was in my early 20s. That's when I bought it, and I really enjoyed it. And therefore, obviously, when you use a deck, as a matter of fact, all of my used decks are the old ones, because I did not actually tend to buy that many decks at the beginning. So what I do in this case is slightly different. As you can imagine, the Osho, let's call it the Osho Tarot, apologies for that. Obviously in the description box below, I'll make sure to write the correct title and to put the link if you want to purchase this deck. Just one thing about Osho, I know that there's a lot of animosity around his figure. I just want to say, please check your sources, because I actually did a lot of research around Osho, and not everything we read online, or not everything we hear is actually correct. And this deck has been illustrated by Madhava Padma, and let's say that that's what I focus on, and it's based on Osho's quotes and the concept of a kind of Zen kind of Buddhism. And I really enjoy that. So that's my way of approaching this deck. But this has been a teaching deck for me for a long time. So as you can imagine, I don't use it for meditation in this case. In this case, I will have to wait for my knowledge of all the cards to be sound in order to be able to read with it. But I do believe that these two will pair really well together, because they do, the Osho Tarot really does help you also to tune out in some cases, except that tuning out gives you the possibility to ironically focus back into the reading. So the fact that there's no, at first look, you wouldn't really recognize, for example, what the cards correspond to in the traditional RWS, but I can assure you that the system is the RWS, in the sense that you have 78 cards, you have 22 majors, you have 56 minors, and they correspond to exactly to that. Now, for example, you will notice that these are the minors, for example. So there is the Roman number corresponds to the major. Sorry, did I say minor? The Roman number corresponds to the corresponding major, so number 8 will be strength, and it gives you a keyword related to that, so courage for strength. And for example, you would have noticed that there's different colors inside the shape here. And for example, the rainbow color refers back to the suit of Earth, or the suit of Pentacles, as we may know it, and this is obviously referring to the 5 of Earth. So in this case, this is one of my favorite cards, because let me just show you. I'm sure you know this deck, you know, so I don't need to tell you much about it. But what I do love about this card is the fact that the lock is actually open. So I actually see myself so many times into this little kid that really wants to go out, and perhaps what he's looking at is some of his friends playing, and he wants to go out and he feels like he's trapped inside. And that, to me, generally speaking, would have been an 8 of Swords situation, because the cage that surrounds you is actually not really a cage. It's not really difficult to release yourself, which is the situation here. But I love that it's actually the 5 of Pentacles, because it gives you the idea that even the situation of loss, of financial loss, of being left out in the cold, more likely, refer back to this card, is a situation that can be resolved very quickly if you only took a step back and looked at the actual situation. Just take it a step back and look at the lock. The lock is open. So it's something that I remind myself whenever I have the tendency to maybe cry on the circumstances and be frustrated and think, why has this happened? I really didn't need this in my life right now. And then I tell myself to really look at the situation and just understand that perhaps there is a solution. And that really helps me. And I kid you not, many times I actually refer back to that card, and I think to myself, you're that little kid right now, you feel miserable because you think that you're being left out in the cold and your friends are playing and you're missing out on the enjoyment. But actually, if you really look at the situation, you're not that far to joining them. It's up to you to take a step back, take a good look, and just realize what you need to do. In that case, open the lock or remove the chain to join in the joy of your friends. This deck has helped me a lot, you know, in many times of my life in which I felt like I was in a very tough situation. And there's a lot of cards that will give you that sense of frustration, anguish, anxiety. Also, I really like that the Eight of Swords that we talked about, in this case is represented as a woman, you know, obviously herself, she's feeling so frustrated, she's feeling the pain, and it feels as if these invisible or almost visible hands were just grabbing her hair and tearing up and just, you know, inflicting pain on her. But it's also a reminder of perhaps it's our mind that is doing it to us. So this deck is absolutely amazing to make you realize what the true situation is. There is a lot of cards that really remind you to look behind the mirror. And I really think that that's the reason why these two decks go really well together, because this deck is a game of mirrors. And that's the way in which these two bond. These two have a conversation exactly because of that. Because this deck is a reminder that things you look at could be a game of mirrors. And life is exactly that. And that's what the Hokusai Tarot will also tell you. So these two, I think that these two pair really well together. And I'm quite happy, you know, to have this deck, the Asipaya deck. Because it's a very, it's a new deck, it's a new concept for me, and it represents something that obviously tickles my mind and inspiration, and I'm so very grateful to this person that sent it over, because it's, I always really appreciate unique decks that give me a possibility to expand my horizon, my knowledge, and also to keep my mind occupied. So this is the Asipaya Oracle. Now the next deck I want to show you is the Tricksters Journey by Jiasung, and I've talked about this deck a couple of times before. So instead of showing you just the deck, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into pairings, because what happened was that I was watching one of Annette's videos at Project Refine Life, and she was talking about this deck, and she, like myself, we love this deck a lot. It's been a complete surprise for me. I actually didn't think that I was going to like this this much, but I really do. And one thing that I completely agree with Annette, she was saying that she tried a couple of pairings, but she couldn't, at the time she was filming the video, she couldn't really find a deck that was really, you know, bringing out the essence of the Trickster's Journey by this pairing. And she had been trying a couple of different oracle decks, and at that time I was pairing it with the Kantiki Oracle, because it somewhat the artwork kind of reminded me of that oracle. But it actually did. I realized after a couple of times that it actually didn't work. I have since found 3 decks that I believe actually work quite well as a pairing with this deck, and one of them is the Land Sky Oracle by Theresa Hutch, and it's this one here. And I really love the way these two interact. It's not just a matter of aesthetics. I always say this. Of course, aesthetics play a really good part in, you know, a really good role in deciding whether I want to pair 2 decks together or not, or whether they actually work together. But to me, it's also a matter of energies. It's a matter of do the keywords resonate with each other? Is there some kind of conversation that takes place between the 2 decks? Because let me just tell you, pairing up tarot and oracle decks, it's a bit of a matchmaking business, and I'm really meaning in the literal sense. So you are making a match, and you know, because we look at matchmaking And the matchmaking has been an industry that has been booming ever since internet was, let's say, launched, because it's something that has become much easier nowadays. Of course, you have all of these websites, and you can put your profile in, and you know, there's algorithms and according to your do's and don'ts and faves and you know, pets and peeves and stuff like that, they will match you up with someone that the algorithm that has been created by someone that supposedly knew what they were doing. You know, this person is supposed to be your match, in the sense that they will actually be comfortable around you, and you will find that you will be speaking to each other and finding a lot of things in common, and you will you know, become a better person. Because at the end of the day, the fact of being in a couple, the fact of being a matched person to someone else, means that we become a better version of ourselves. So at least that's what we feel we should become. And I believe that matchmaking a tarot and oracle deck is exactly like that, and bears the same kind of responsibility, in the sense that one deck on its own can be very powerful. But when you find a good match with, whether it's a tarot or oracle deck, but with another deck, it becomes even better. So this is what I talk about when I talk about energies. So obviously there could be aesthetics that work, color palettes being the same, the artwork being very full of resonances and echoes and stuff. But if the energies don't work, it could be like two person sharing the same physiognomy, so being you know, dark brown hair, dark eyes, and light skin, or you know, tall, short, or what have you. But if they don't share the same energy, if they don't share the same vision for life and other very important things, then the chances are that they probably won't actually be a good match. And that goes for tarot and oracle decks in the same way. And I do believe that these two actually go really well together. I feel like there is this kind of flow of energy going back and forth between the cards, and there is that kind of you know, also the kind of echoes that we always look for whenever we are trying to match two decks. So do they call each other? Do they respond to the other's call? Do they actually have this kind of conversation? I really believe they do. So this is the Land Sky Oracle, but I wanted to show you another couple of decks that I think may pair quite well with this one, with the Trickster Journey. So let's put these cards back, so we have the whole deck in here. And by the way, I really enjoy using this deck by itself. It's a very powerful deck. The legend, as you've probably heard a couple of times from either myself or others talking about this deck, is related to the Monkey King. So it's the journey of the Monkey King. Now, another deck that I think pairs really well with the Trickster's Journey is this one. It's the Soul Trees Ascension deck by Alison Williams Yee. This is by far one of my favorite oracle decks, but I do tend to use it by itself, and it was a kind of a similar story. So because of the graphics of the Soul Trees deck, I found that no other tarot deck would actually pair really well. But look at how these two pair together. Look at not just the colors, but I really mean, look at the energy, the flow of communication, the conversation that takes place. You know, be spontaneous between the World card and the Moon card. I feel that we're probably achieving a really good match in this case. It's, as I always say, it's something that it's probably very personal, in the sense that if this doesn't work for you, then it just doesn't. Then, you know, try something else. Or in many other cases, it just means that perhaps the decks don't really want to be matched up at that time. They don't really want to work with something else, a different energy. They don't want to be complemented, so they prefer to actually give you the message in a very direct way. and that's fine too. But I do believe that when you're actually looking for this kind of complementary energy, complementary conversation, then, you know, when the decks actually match, they will let you know. You will feel it, you will see it, you will see, as I said before, I call the echoes and resonances. For example, you know, between these twigs and the branches of the tree, or it could be between colors that are very similar. It could be between, I don't know, the symbology, perhaps the two cards share a similar symbol. It could be about keywords. Perhaps some tarot decks have a keyword, not just the title and a number, and the keyword may be the same keyword as the oracle deck. In this case, I really do feel like we're very much on the same color palette. So that's one thing that I really look at whenever I want to check whether these two decks pair up well or not. But I really do believe that there's also something that goes beyond that. It's something that is deeper than that. And they look beautiful together. It's a match that is actually aesthetically pleasing, I believe. But let's show you another deck, and I think that that one is actually the one that I like the most, because it's a very recent acquisition. It's actually made by an Australian artist, and I'm always very proud to showcase local Aussies, fellow Aussies work. So this is the deck. It's, as you can tell, it shares some similarities with the Land Sky Oracle by Theresa Hutch, but this is actually the Nature's Healing Chi Oracle by Denise Robinson. The artwork is by Jane Curtis. I really appreciate this deck. It's got the kind of, so the artwork may be reminding you of the Land Sky Oracle because it does have that kind of, at first, you know, there might even be a feather card in the Land Sky Oracle, but then it takes its own shape, it takes its own voice, and it really accompanies you in this journey together with the keywords and the actual concepts of the cards. So this deck is all about the flow of life, and that's why it's called the Nature's Healing Chi Oracle. And I really like the concept of this deck. I really like the fact that this deck can definitely be used for meditation, but I believe that the keywords that I used are actually very conducive of a reading. So I'm actually using this deck exactly in this way. And I feel that these two decks are perfect for each other. They share a very strong energy. The Oracle deck has a lot of cards that refer back to the elements, so to alchemy. They also refer back to astrology. So we just saw the full moon card with the keyword complete. But generally speaking, they are very nature-based. I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe that there are no humans in there, just as much as there are no humans in the Tricksters Journey, even though the Tricksters Journey tend to personify animals. Well, there you go, there are humans as well, my bad. So what do you think? Let me know, because I'm very interested. I think that whenever there's a really good match, for me, it might not necessarily look like a very good match to someone else. So I'm very much interested to know if you feel the same for the three decks that I've shown you paired up with the Trickster Journey. I feel that these three, particularly this one, work really well. But as I said, it might not work for someone else. In any case, I will put the Etsy shop. So she has an Etsy shop, and I hope that she ships overseas. So she's based in Australia. It's a really beautiful deck, and as a matter of fact, it pairs really well also with the Healing Waves. So if you have the Healing Waves, this deck will be absolutely fantastic when paired up with that tarot. So we've seen the Trickster's Journey Tarot and the Nature's Healing Chi Oracle. And the next deck I want to show you is another generous gift, and it's the Golden Dragon Tarot. Now this edition is from 1994. Unfortunately, this deck is out of print now. I do see it on eBay, for example, and it does come up in every now and then on you know, those Facebook groups for trading or swapping or selling, and it's a beautiful deck. It is so evocative. The images are simply amazing. There is so much energy on this deck. The system is the RWS, but you will see that there is a slightly different kind of interpretation for each and every card, and it's a very thoughtful one at that. And let me say, I love this artwork so much. There is such mastery in this deck. It looks like a little gem. It's absolutely a joy to look at. It's a joy to use it, to the point that I'm actually, because it's in you know, out of print and it's hard to find, and it's become a very precious deck, I'm hesitating in using it because I don't want to ruin it. And I tend to, you know, in many cases when I do readings, I try to be as gentle as possible with the cards, but in some cases I'm not too precious, so you know, I would just use them, shuffle them, and then put them aside and then pick them up again, and I'm just really worried about damaging it. And you've seen what I've done to the Osho Tarot. You see what I can do to a deck that I use a lot, you know, and I just don't want that to happen for this deck, because I really love it so much. It reminds me so much of those scroll paintings you can find in China. As a matter of fact, there's a story behind this. It makes me a bit misty because when I went to China the first time, it was just after my mom had passed away. And my dad used to love, so he's passed as well, so I'm using the past tense, but his love for the Far East was so strong that he actually learned Chinese. He learned Chinese, and because he loved Confucius so much and he wanted to read in Chinese, he obviously never could, because it requires a lot of years and years of studying. But he learned, and let's say that he could have a very simple, basic conversation in Chinese, in Mandarin, sorry. And his love for the Eastern philosophy, you know, passed on to me, because I really loved it. And I remember that I was in China just after my mom had passed away, and I bought for my dad this scroll painting, and he really loved it. Like, he was so proud of it, and every time someone was visiting, he was pointing at it saying, "My daughter bought it for me. She actually went to China." And then when he passed away, I couldn't go to Italy because it was during the pandemic. I couldn't go to Italy for a while. When I finally could, amongst the things that a friend of mine so generally, she went to my dad's place, and she could save a few things before you know, the place was vacated, and she saved this scroll, and I had forgotten about it. And I remember that when I saw it, it was such an intense form of relief, because I thought I had to say goodbye in many different ways to someone, but when you can still save something that will remind you of them, it's a different way. You feel like they're still with you. And so now this scroll is hanging, you know, on one of my walls, and it's, you know, it is just a wonderful thing that is actually, because it's at first you need to understand. Okay, so the story was that I obviously could not, living in Australia, I could not bring over all of the things belonging to my dad, because it would have been impossible. We were talking about a full house of 5 rooms and everything. And so I told this friend of mine, and I couldn't go, but the house needed to be vacated. And so I told this friend of mine, and she was wonderful. And she said, "Of course I'm going, Silvia. Of course I will do that for you. It's an honor." Such is wonderful, this friendship that we have. And so she went there and she just decided, and I trusted her 1000%, and she picked the right things, absolutely. And you know, one proof is that she saw this, she didn't know the story. She didn't know that I actually was the one that bought that scroll painting, but she saw it. She knows that I love, you know, China and Japan and the Far East, and she picked it and she saved it. It was one of the things that she chose to have sent over. She actually kept it for me, and then I went over to her. And that was, you know, it is so charged with emotions, because obviously it's something that I did for my dad, and he appreciated that. And then this person did for, this friend of mine did for me. She saved it for me. And this deck reminds me of that, because the scroll painting is very, very similar. There's a couple of scenes that could be, for example, the way in which the trees are depicted and the mountains and stuff. It is a very traditional style of painting. So this is the Golden Dragon Tarot. Now, I'm also going to show you a couple of ways in which you can pair this tarot with an oracle, because I believe that it's a very interesting pairing. Let me see if I am in frame. Sort of. So I'm pairing it up with the Divine Nature Oracle. I think that it works because it's actually, this is written by Angie Sullins, sorry, I don't know whether it's pronounced Sullin or Sullins. Apologies for that. The art is by Greg Spalenka. It's released by, is that US Games? Yes, it's by US Games. It's a deck that actually literally, so I've seen it like a million times. And I've loved it at first sight, but because it was coming from the US, I had to purchase it via Amazon US because it wasn't available. I don't know whether it is available now in Australia, perhaps not. But in any case, so I had to purchase it from Amazon US, and it took a while. And to ship, it took 3 weeks to ship out. So generally speaking, whenever you buy something from Amazon US, whenever it's in stock, they actually ship it straight away. Or at least that has been the case for me so far. But in this case, it took 3 weeks just to be shipped, to the point that I was going to cancel the order, because I thought, well, you know, if it takes 3 weeks just to ship, to actually dispatch, it would take another 3 to come to Australia. So it's going to take ages. But the moment in which I went to cancel the order, it says about to ship. And so I said, okay, well, fair enough. I think that these two pair up really well together. They do kind of share a similar, let's say, theme. The artwork is not necessarily the same, but you'll see what I mean, because it's got a very strong common energy these two share. And I really, really like it. So I pretty much enjoy the keywords of the oracle. And there is this kind of, the artwork may not be necessarily similar to any Eastern kind of artwork or Chinese kind of scroll painting artwork, but it is, in some cases it does remind you of that. There are a lot of common elements when it comes to, you know, the elements of water, for example, or air. And if you follow the way in which the oracle is communicating with you and with the cards of the tarot, is actually a very beautiful conversation. Bubble up with the Two of Cups and the Ten of Cups. The book is amazing. I'm actually really a fan of Angie's work. I think I have a couple of her decks. So I think that these two pair up really well with each other. But of course, as always, please let me know what you think. I'm always interested because in many cases I've seen that perhaps you have a different alternative that, you know, you're using it with, you have a different oracle, you pair this, or a different tarot, you pair the oracle with, and that I don't know of, and then, you know, something clicks and I'm like, oh, you're exactly right, you're perfectly right, it does pair up really well with such and such, and I will try that pairing as well. And I always like it because it's something else, it's something more. you know, that I can enjoy. Coincidentally, this one, the Divine Nature Oracle, pairs up really well, and you wouldn't say that, but I just, as soon as I saw this, it reminded myself of the Marielle Tarot. So the Marielle Tarot has the Page of Cups that looks exactly like this, although the figure is turned towards the left rather than towards the right, but it's exactly like this. So it's like let's say a younger person with a shaved head and a painting that looks like some kind of fish on their backs, and it's absolutely beautiful. And sometimes one card is all it takes for a good match. I kid you not. It could be you know, one card that reminds you of a different deck, and then you pair them up together and you think that that really works, or it doesn't. But I think these two, I've actually used them a couple of times together, not too many times, because the Divine Nature only arrived yesterday. As a matter of fact, I just tried them on last night, sorry, and this morning again before filming this video, and I thought, yeah, it really does, it really works. So this is the Golden Dragon Tarot, and this is the Divine Nature Oracle. So those were my Chinese decks, or let's call them Chinese inspired decks. And now I'm going to show you all of my Japanese inspired or themed decks, starting with the Hokusai Tarot by Osvaldo Menegazzi, published by Meneghello. You've seen this deck many times on my channel because it's one of my favorite decks by Meneghello. I really love this deck so much. It's one of my favorite, but obviously, or not, I don't necessarily use it for readings because it's not meant to be. It is a deck that is based on the ukiyo-e practice of woodblock printing that is very popular in Japan, and it's based on inspired, let's say, by the works of Hokusai. If you're not familiar with Hokusai, he is very famous for the painting of the tsunami, so the big wave, and many others. He was actually very interested in Japanese lore and supernatural, so yokai, and he does have there are a few paintings of yokais, so supernatural beings. So I've seen this deck, I've shown this deck, sorry, many times, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much because I have so many other decks I want to show you that I actually realized I haven't talked about a lot in my channel. For example, the Stella's Tarot by Stella Kaoruko, and this deck is has been trimmed. I remember talking about this before in my channel. So this deck originally, I don't know if you can tell, but originally came with really large borders, and I felt like there was a lack of balance between the tiny figures represented on the cards and the large and wide borders. And I didn't know what to do, but then I saw Sarah from In 80s Blues Tarot posted on her Instagram account. She had trimmed this deck to the artwork. Let me zoom in so you can see better. And I feel that there's a lot of sense of balance now, and there's a lot of conversation going on between the cards because there's a lot of directionality. That's what I always say. Whenever the image on the cards has a lot of directionality, I feel like the deck could profit from being borderless. Now, let me remind you that in many cases, it depends on the artist's wish, of course. If in many cases the borders are actually functional to express something, to frame the artwork. In many other cases, it could, and there's a lot of artists, and I'm not making this up, you can actually tell by the evolution on second or third editions in some artists' decks, in which they go from with borders to without borders, and they explain that they evolved that way because the first time that they actually printed their decks, they didn't actually know how the borders work, in the sense that there's a lot of you need to take into consideration the bleeding safe area when you're printing. If you're not aware of that, you will not know that you need to account for a lot of artwork. You need to, let's say, if you want your artwork to be this big, you have to make it at least much bigger, because otherwise you will lose a lot of it in the bleed. Literally, it's called the printing edges, let's say. In this case, for example, you will see what I mean. So let's see if I can show you better. So these are swords, obviously, and there's the upper part of the sword where you hold it. Sorry, I don't actually know the English name for it. So in these cases, you can tell that the artwork would have been completed with, you know, the heads of the upper part of the swords, but it has been cut into the artwork because of that problem that we talked about. And that's a pity, because it means that you don't actually see the whole image as the artist intended. And I believe that that was the case. I remember reading about it in Poppy Palin's words when she was talking about her tarot. Which one was it? The Everyday Enchantment Tarot, for example. She actually said as such. She said that those borders were there, and there's a lot of people trimming them, because she actually didn't know how the process of printing actually takes away a lot of the artwork. It cuts in, it eats into the artwork. So in many cases, it's not going against the wishes of the artist. In some other cases it is, absolutely. I'm not saying that trimming decks is never going against the artist's wishes, but in many cases it's actually respecting what the intention was originally. And you will see that, for example, in the Solaro Occulto. So in the Solaro Occulto, the edition that is currently, no, it's actually finished, so it has been funded on Kickstarter. The art is borderless, the cards will be borderless, because that was the original intention of the artist. And at the beginning, there were the first couple of editions were with really large borders, but now they evolved into borderless. And it's, in some cases, it's also corresponding to a request by the wishes of the tarot community itself. Many artists tend to listen to what we say, what we wish for, and they will go borderless because it is the majority. As I said, again, I don't want to start a discussion, but in many other cases, of course, the borders are there for a reason, and there are beautiful borders. But when it's just because of a misunderstanding with the printer, then of course, you know, it's actually bringing back the original intention of the artist by trimming the borders off. So this was the Stella's Tarot. And the next deck I want to show you is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry. I believe this was a Kickstarter. This deck has got 87 cards. It was a Kickstarter, and this is also a generous gift that I received. By the way, I noticed that there is a bit of a rainbow or a shade. So I'm trying my best with additional lighting to see whether I can overcome that. Not that actually, rainbows are always welcome. I really love rainbows. But I don't really like that there's a shade here, but a shadow, sorry, not a shade. So in any case, so this is a very interesting tarot. The cardstock is phenomenal. It's that kind of soft linen, soft matte linen that I really like and appreciate. The card backs are beautiful. Obviously, as you can imagine, it's obviously based on scroll paintings as well. And it's very beautiful. The concept is that each and every card, there are additional cards because it's got 87. Sorry about the helicopter, by the way. It is a really beautiful day today in Manly. They are doing some recon work along the coastline, and so there might be helicopters coming and going. I obviously don't know when they come and go, but let's have a look. I mean, if it's too terrible, I'll try and I'll stop filming and I'll finish this video later. So this is a really beautiful deck, and as you can imagine, it does remind me a lot of the Japanese scroll paintings and also the woodblock paintings as well. It is based on RWS, but it's got, again, its own take on it, let's say, and it's a really beautiful one as well, because there is the guidebook that actually goes into the images on the cards, and it's a very beautiful, it does for a very, very beautiful kind of readings. I have used it a couple of times just to see whether, you know, I was feeling the deck or not. And I have to say, because I had seen this on a Kickstarter, or perhaps someone was you know, showing the images of this deck. And at the beginning, I was kind of taken back by the presence of the scrolls here, as you can see. But I think this actually works, and I think it goes back to what we were saying before about the borders that have a reason. And now the light is failing me as well. Apologies, it's just technology today is not on my side. But anyway, I think it's still clear, so we can go on. So as I was saying, in many, many cases, the borders have, you know, have a reason to be there. And in this case, I think they do, because they actually do give you that kind of sense that you're looking at something, you're looking at this beautiful representation, these beautiful paintings, and it feels almost as if you were peeking inside the card, and you were enjoying the way in which the card is expressing the meaning of the tarot. And so I really, really do enjoy this deck. I haven't tried any kind of pairings yet, but ironically, I think that this deck would pair really well, not necessarily with an oracle deck, but with a tarot deck. So with the Yokai Yochi, for example. As a matter of fact, I've got the Yokai Yochi here, so why not try? Because I believe that there's only a few cases in which a tarot deck will pair well with another tarot deck. And I think this might be the case. But let me just give this a shuffle and prepare the Yokai Yochi, and let's see. So as I was saying, I wanted to try this out. I wanted to try and pair in the Tarot of Japanese Poetry with the Yokai Yoshitara, which is this one here, by Bybee. The reason why I chose a tarot to be paired up with another tarot is because the Yokai Yoshitara is very, very special. It's one of those decks, let's say, that because each and every card reflects or talks about a figure that exists in the Japanese supernatural or Japanese folklore, and it's referred back to yokai. So yokai is literally the supernatural being. I believe that there's always some kind of a keyword that is not necessarily written. As a matter of fact, it's not actually written on the cards, but if you familiarize yourself with the figures, the characters of the yokai, then you immediately will think about the keywords, and that's the way in which you can actually use a tarot deck as some sort of an oracle deck, because the images will inspire you to think of a keyword, or in many, many cases, some tarot decks also have an actual keyword at the bottom or in anywhere in the card that you can actually use as an oracle. So I thought these two would pair up well together because of the color palette first and foremost, but also because I do believe that they also obviously share the same cultural background. They're both based on, let's say, Japanese culture. The artwork is similar simply because it is very faithful and very respectful of, again, the Japanese artwork and the Japanese culture. And if you do know or familiarize yourself with Japanese lore, you will see that in many, many cases, the Yokai Yochi is very good in the way in which he portrays the cards. So, for example, the Wheel of Fortune is this yokai that is literally impersonating a wheel. So this wheel is always in motion, and it is depicted as a wheel, and at the center of it you have the face of a demon, and it's a malignant demon, is a negative one, let's say, in overall, because it's cruel, it's very aggressive, and it will actually kill humans, in the sense that it will just provoke chaos, because the wheel will be constantly in motion at really high speed, and it will just kill or produce devastation wherever it goes. And you can see that in the sense that perhaps associating that with the Wheel of Fortune gives a little bit of a shadow meaning to the card itself, or to the essence of the card itself, because personally I tend to believe that the Wheel of Fortune is very balanced as a card. Yes, of course you have the peaks and the troughs, and you have the good times and the bad times, but it's the cycle of nature that is reminding us that perhaps things are not looking up right now, but they will, because everything that goes up comes down, and vice versa. Assigning this particular yokai to the Wheel of Fortune does give it a little bit of a shadow meaning. What I like is that in this case it could convey the sense of destruction, and if you associate this with the yokai represented, your keyword will be destruction. It can also be speed, depending on what you feel like. And you can use it this way with the association of the tarot. So we've got, for example, the world. So we've got destruction or speed or recklessness between the world and the day before winter. So it's a reminder of the completion, the totality, the wholeness of life that actually has this kind of speed. It just goes into this kind of reckless speed that can become destruction. And there is the kind of destruction that is the day before. We see in the trees losing their leaves the day before winter. It's just the day before winter is the day in which we need to prepare for winter. It's the day in which we need to account for that kind of destruction to happen in order to be able to go through winter and remain unscathed. So it's something that you can read this way. It's obviously something that you can only do when you've achieved a certain knowledge of the yokais represented by the Yokai Yoshitara. I do have a video in which I show all of the yokais of the major arcanas, talking about the representation and the way in which Japanese lore actually sees them. Sometimes they are funny, for example, sometimes they're violent, but you can defend yourself against them. Some other times there's nothing you can do, and you just have to hang on to their life. And it's something very interesting that I've done, a research thing that I've done when I was actually studying Japanese lore for many years. Obviously it's something that it doesn't actually jump straight out of the cards, let's put it this way. So you will need to at least have a look at the guidebook, let's say. But what I mean is that these two, once you reach that kind of knowledge of the cards, these two will pair up really well together. And as a matter of fact, I think that even if you stick to the traditional meaning of the RWS and you read the Yokai Yochi without necessarily knowing what the yokai represented is or is pointing to, you will still have and enjoy this kind of really beautiful conversation between the cards, because they do share that kind of artwork, and they share that kind of culture. They're based on the same culture, and I believe that they actually communicate in a very nice and flowing way. So this is the, so I've shown you this deck this time. So this is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry, and this is the Yokai Yoshitara. So the next set that I wanted to show you is the Tarocchi Giapponesi. So as you can understand, this is the, let's say, an Italian deck. It's illustrated by Lara Tuan and Fabrizio Spadini, and it's been published by the Vecchi. The Vecchi, I've actually done some kind of research, is not a recent, let's say, company. It's a company that actually produced and released many decks even 20 years ago. And amongst one of my boxes, I actually found a Spanish version of the Celtic Tarot published by the Vecchi. And I've seen in Marine's video, one of her latest videos, The Ways of Your Soul, she's actually showing the tarot of the dog's tarot or something like that. Sorry, I don't remember the actual title of the tarot. And it's also been published by the Vecchi. So funnily enough, they never moved away from their original format, which is, you know, this rather large kind of size. They always have really interesting and chunky guidebooks. And let me show you, just to give you an idea, because the cards are really big, but if I can't show you, let's say, the a benchmark, it's going to be difficult to see that. So what have I got here? So I've got still the Yokai Yochi, and I'm going to show you the difference with one of these cards. The Yokai Yochi is, as you can imagine, a standard tarot size. So there you go. So as you can see, it's slightly wider as well, but it's a lot taller than the standard tarot size. And as I said, they never moved away from this format, and evidently it means that they really, you know, it's their signature, let's call it this way, it's their signature kind of size or formatting feature. And fair enough, you know, kudos to them. This deck is really, really beautiful. It is, as you can notice from these two cards, a Bybee deck. However, there's a few elements on the cards that remind you of the meaning of the card itself. The majors are absolutely gorgeous. I've talked about it, this deck a couple of times. This is, as I said, let's call it a Japanese tarot. It is referring back to Japanese lore, folklore. There are, in a few cards on the majors, for example, there are still some yokai represented. As you can see, for example, this is the Five of Wands, and there is the dragon represented here to give an idea of the fiery energy of the suit. And obviously now you will have the core cards, which are illustrated. It's your typical, and the aces are also kind of illustrated. So it's your typical nice, not really pippish, not 100% pips, but not 100% illustrated kind of deck. So we call it pippish in the sense that, you know, it's neither here nor there, but it's actually kind of beautiful. I really, really like it. And it's a deck that actually pairs really well, and I'm going to show you, with an oracle deck that I got a couple of months ago, and it's this one, is the L'Oracle de Kami et Yokai. Now this is, I believe that this oracle is only in French. You cannot find an English version of this oracle deck, unfortunately. And as a matter of fact, you might want to, well, if you like it, of course, go for it. But in this case, I would say you kind of need to understand French, or you need to be very good with Google Translate. Because as you can see, let me just set them down. As you can see from the cards, there is the English translation or the Romaji translation of the Japanese name of the yokai. So this is an oracle that deals also with yokai and kami. Kami is a loose translation for the word spirit. So it deals with supernatural beings and spirits. Koromo dako, Japanese. I've been studying Japanese for so many years, but obviously there's always some words that I just don't know. There always be words that I don't know, or you know, verbs or declination or stuff like that. It's not an easy language. So as I was saying, there are no keywords, unfortunately. So obviously you will have to go back to the guidebook for each and every one of them. And obviously, after a while, I can assure you that you will definitely get acquainted with the images, and you will be reminded of their meanings after you use them 3 or 4 times, especially if you have some kind of discipline in which you always go back to the guidebook and read what the meaning of the card is. I'm just reminded that Kirin is the actual name for a dragon. So what's Koro? I will have to check that out. Sorry about that. So it's a really beautiful deck. once you start using it and once you start checking what the meanings are, you know, you can actually enjoy the aesthetics. What I meant to say is that this pairs really well with this tarot deck. So if we do this, because the aesthetics, the colors are very similar. There you go. So there's a very nice conversation that goes on, that takes place here. I feel that originally I bought the Oracle de Kamiya Yokai because I wanted an oracle to pair up with the Yokai Yoshitara. However, for the nature of the Yokai Yoshitara, there is, let's say, the nature of the color palette of the Yokai Yoshitara, which is very muted, as you've seen before. I would say that it's not exactly a 100% match with this oracle because the colors make a bit of a difference. Although, let me tell you, it was kind of amazing whenever there was a combination of the same yokai in the oracle and the tarot cards. So this is actually a very good combo. They share a very beautiful color palette, similar color palette. The artwork is very similar as well. And in many, many cases, you will see that the subjects are recalling each other. There is this kind of a conversation. By the way, this is obviously... okay, just a word about what it says here. It says La Bontà di Inari. Inari is a goddess. Bontà is the kindness. It can be translated as the kindness. So it's Inari's kindness. And there are sentences as opposed to titles, you know, in the sense that you will see in each and every one of them, there is a reference of the major arcana, there is a reference to the essence of the character depicted on the card. So when we have the major arcana number 2, which is the High Priestess, you will be reminded of the kindness of the High Priestess, which is kindness is one of the qualities of the High Priestess, because the way in which the creators of this deck wanted to focus on that, and they chose this particular representation of the card. Or for example, when it comes to the Empress, which is number 3, obviously in this case the figure represented is Amano Uzume, and in this case it wants to remind us of the acumen, let's say the intelligence, the smart characteristics of this particular figure. So that's what I wanted to say, that basically you will notice that there are not keywords or titles, but there are actual messages or sentences at the bottom of the majors. So I really do believe that these two pair up really well together. They, as I always say, there's this kind of conversation that takes place. And in many, many cases, you will notice that when there is a good pairing, the cards don't necessarily need you to put on an effort, let's say, to give an interpretation, because in many cases, you have that kind of complementary meaning that comes out of the combination of the pairing. So it's not just the meaning of the tarot cards, it's not just the meaning of the oracle card, it's two different essences that put together, as in alchemy. There is a process of transformation that will give you a different approach to the meaning of this combo, and so you will come up with a different kind of meaning, which is a very beautiful process, I might say. It's almost in itself a way in which you will, let's say, use a spread. It's got the same kind of meaning. Whenever you're using a spread, for example, and there's a very special position, and that card takes sometimes a different meaning, according to the position or the significance of the position where the card is, it's exactly the same process. You will give the card a different meaning according to the association that comes out with the oracle. So again, this is the Tarocchi Giapponese, so the Japanese tarot published by De Vecchi. But I want to leave the Oracle de Kamiya Yokai here because I have a very recent acquisition of mine. As a matter of fact, it just came in this week. And this is also the Italian version, so it's Yokai Tarot. It's the Italian version. I know that there's a French version. It's by Marianna Zanetta and Matthew Meyer. Maya, sorry, I need glasses. So this is definitely a tarot that I've used it a couple of times, and it's my, let's say, recommendation if you missed out on the Yokai Yochi Tarot, which I know that it's become very expensive now if you want it. If you missed out on that, definitely get this one when there will be an English translation, or if you can read Italian or French, definitely go for it, because it's a very beautiful, fully illustrated deck, and it pairs really well, even better, I would say, with the Kami and Yokai. So let's put some cards back here. And so I've shown this deck, I think, in my last couple of videos. It's a beautiful deck. It's absolutely superb. I really enjoy it. I love the artwork. I love the colors. I love the choice of the tarot, of the yokai associated with the tarot meaning. It's superb. And as you can tell, it's fully illustrated. It's not pippish at all like the publication by the Becky is. It's fantastic. The guidebook is a chunky 180 pages guidebook that really delves deep into the meaning of the cards, but also on the legend that is behind the legend, or let's say the yokai that is represented by the cards. This is the marriage of the foxes, for example, that you have it also in the Yokai Yochi tarot. Many of these cards actually are kind of a duplicate from the Yokai Yochi, and funnily enough, some will have the same association with the major or minor arcana, some others will not. So I think it's really beautiful to perhaps make a comparison. Okay, maybe one day, if I have time, I will actually make a video in which I will compare these two decks, because I'm really interested in seeing. The Three of Swords is just really, really haunting, isn't it? That's crazy. So it would be really interesting to see the difference in the interpretation of which yokai to choose for one or other, meanings on the cards. Now, the only thing that I have to warn you about, and this is for the Italian version, and I have no idea whether the French version or the future English version will have the same, but the cardstock is really flimsy, as you can tell. It feels like it's paper being laminated back and front, and that's it. However, having said that, it reminds me a lot, and you will know, the Stunning Tarot, the third edition of the Stunning Tarot by Jonasa Giles. That is the same kind of quality, although it's a semi-matte, let's say, cut finish. I actually don't mind it. I don't know, I think it's because I like this deck so much that I like the fact that it pairs so well that it looks like it's actually made, to actually accompany this oracle. They match so well that I don't mind that the quality is not, let's say, my favorite. I still highly recommend this tarot deck. Wow, that's beautiful. So it's these two have their own life. It's like they found each other, they are getting along with each other. They don't want me to be the third wheel, so they're kind of pushing me out because they have their own conversation, and it's one of those conversations that can go on all night because you have so many things you share with the other person that, you know what I mean, you just go on and talk and share stuff about yourself and just really click with the other person. And these two decks really feel like they're doing just that. It is a pleasure to use them together. I've only done that a couple of times, and as a matter of fact, unfortunately, I don't have enough knowledge, let's say, of the Kami and Yokai oracle in order to be able not to go back to refer to the book. But once that I will, I really believe that there will be a very enjoyable time to be had by using these two together. I can't, say any more about these two and how beautiful it is to use them together. It's a very powerful experience. It really feels almost like, you know, the tarot reader should just take a step back and just let these two do their job and work together to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in a reading. Really, really beautiful. I can't say this enough. It's you know what it feels like? It feels like reading a manga. Reading a manga, in the sense that, you know, you have these kind of stories, and the style is the same, and, you know, every now and then you've got Japanese writing. It really does give you that kind of feeling. So I was a fan of mangas when I was a kid, and I was watching anime as well. In particular, I remember I watched for so many years Lam and Ataru. I don't know if you watched that, but it went on from 1978 until 1987, I believe. And obviously it was a Japanese anime, and Lam was coming, she was an alien, but and she was really quirky, and it was at times, I remember, so she was wearing a bikini, and she was always dropping. The bra almost fell off. Every time, you know, in each and every episode, and I was laughing, and, you know, the innocence of a kid. Obviously it had no other meaning for me, but I was laughing all the time at watching that. And that's probably watching anime. That wasn't the only one. I was watching anime for hours, because I think that in Italy we had this passion for Japan that has been going on for decades at that time, and we had so many imports of Japanese anime. We could watch 5 or 6 different ones every day, I kid you not, for hours, and I really loved doing that. And then I grew up with this passion. And it does remind me of a little bit like reading a manga magazine, or, you know, watching an anime on TV. So this is, again, I highly recommend it. Is the Yokai Tarot. As I said, it's now available in French and Italian, just been published a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully they'll come out with an English version soon. You can I'll put the link in the description box below, because you know, if you want to grab a copy. And this is the Oracle de Kami et Yokai. And since I promised there would have been an unboxing, so here it is. I have been looking for an anime-based tarot deck for a long time, and there has been a lot of publications, either anime or manga. There were a couple of decks, or one in several editions by Los Carabel. I think it was called the Traditional Manga. I couldn't find it, and then I remember that I found it in a bookstore, but it was twice the price. And being Italian, I can assure you that paying $70-80 for a Los Carabel deck, one of those traditional ones, not the special editions, in a tag box, it's painful. It just hurts me. And I always tell myself, it's okay, I'm going to ask one of my friends back in Italy to buy a copy for me, and then when I go, I'll just pick it up, and then I always forget and I never get it. So that one would have been, I believe, by Los Carabel, would have been a beautiful one, but I couldn't get it. And I saw this one, but I had no idea, because I think it's, yes, there you go. It is published by Insight Edition, and the problem that I've seen a couple of times with Insight Edition is that they always have really beautiful majors and very peepish and lazy pips, kind of minors. But a friend of mine told me to check this out, because she said that it's actually, she said you're gonna like it, so I trust her. But it's sight unseen. I haven't even watched any walkthrough. I literally just saw these images because they were also on Amazon. As a matter of fact, I feel like, no, perhaps not even these ones. Because I saw the Hermit card on Amazon, and I fell in love with it. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I like this Hermit card so much. And the Hermit card is one of those cards that I actually look at, you know, whenever I need to decide whether to buy a deck or not. So I thought, even if it is peepish, I think I could be okay with it. And I think that ever since they received a lot of, you know, messages from tarot reader and tarot collectors, saying that, you know, a lazy pip is not necessarily appreciated. Insight Edition is actually kind of taking a different kind of approach to their decks. And for example, if you're familiar with the Stranger Things Tarot, that's also been published by Insight Edition, and in the UK it's called Titan Books. It's different, they are licensed, and I feel that it's a way in between. So the pips are semi-illustrated, apart from the suit of scoops that is not necessarily fully illustrated, but the others are. So I feel like they're going in the right direction. Always assuming that the right direction is what the tarot community feels like, which is might not be the case depending on what the intention of the artist. I'm not going to look at the guidebook because I want to look at the cards first, because the guidebook will tell you if the cards are, the minors are illustrated or not. But there is apparently a really good guidebook. It's a bigger, a chunky one. Okay, so well, okay, this is a problem that I've seen a couple of times, in which there seems to be like a bit of a split in the deck, and this part seems to have a bit of a bow, which is not really a problem, because I noticed that these kind of things actually tend to solve themselves whenever you start using the decks. But let's have a look at the cards. So, okay, obviously these are the majors. These are the ones that I feel like you can actually see on the listings on Amazon. It does remind me so much. Oh my god, I love this. Oh, I love this. It reminds me so much of the anime that I was watching. Ah, there you go, that's the Hermit card. How beautiful is this Hermit? It's, I must say, so far I get so much really good vibes of anime. Absolutely. Oh, art. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's interesting, because art will be the keywords you see in Thoth decks, but the refiguration is the temperance typical one of the flow between the cups, the water. Okay, that's an interesting devil. I would have loved to have Sailor Moon for the moon though. So it's, you know, at first glance, oh yeah, that's definitely. Okay, it starts with the Queen of Wands. The minors start with the King of Wands. Queen, well, I like the way, Prince, okay, yeah, definitely Thothy. Prince and Princess. And then the Ace. Okay, I see what you mean. Definitely not a pippish one. Fantastic. Oh yeah, definitely not a pippish one. That I feel, oh yeah, we can definitely say it's fully illustrated. At least this suit. Yes, definitely. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, definitely happy with this. Really happy with this. So I don't think we need to show you card by card. I might do a walkthrough if you're interested, but I feel like I'm joining the party a bit late, because I've seen a lot of people, you know, talking about this deck. Oh, geez, okay. Queen of Swords, well, there you go. Okay, that's ruthless for you. Do you have this deck? How do you feel about it? If in particular, I'm interested to know whether you were or still are a fan of anime, and if you think that, oh, that's great. And if you think that this tarot deck keeps, you know, with the spirit of the anime, not just when it comes to, you know, the artwork, because anyone can copy that kind of, not anyone, I wouldn't be able to, but let's say it's not a difficult task to copy the style. But what I'm interested in, if you have this deck and you know anime, does that feel like the figures represented on the cards actually match up with the meaning and the essence of the card itself when looking back at, because this is traditional RWS for me, but then again, you know, it does have a kind of a couple of elements from Thoth. So it's an interesting combination. Really happy about this deck. I was a bit hesitant, but I do trust this person when she told me, no, if you're looking for a anime deck that is fully illustrated, this is it. And I'm kind of happy that I listened to her, because I wholeheartedly agree to that. And the last one that I'm going to show you is not actually a tarot deck. Now this one is tiny, so this is a standard size, so as you can see it's tiny. Let me show you the cards. So this is called Hanafta. Hanafta is a very special kind of card, let's say, game in Japan and also Korea. So I have a couple of friends from South Korea. They told me it's called, I actually only read it, so I don't know how to pronounce it, but Huatu. I might be completely wrong. I don't know whether the U in Japanese, you don't pronounce it in certain position in the word. I don't know whether you pronounce it or not in Korean, probably not. So maybe what. But it's a very, so this kind of version, I read all the comments and feedbacks on Amazon before getting it. It's very affordable. It was only $9 Australian. So I didn't mind whether it was going to be good or not. I've been told that it needs to be this stiff. Okay, so it's so stiff that you can't bend it. You really cannot. And it feels like it's almost a tile. Okay, it's got that kind of, you know, those mahjong tiles. It feels like that. So this is Hanafta. Hana means flowers in Japanese, and fta it means cards. And so this deck is obviously playing cards, but it can actually be used in many different games. I was doing some kind of research about it, and it's called the Game of Flowers or the Game of Seasons, but there's different versions. And all of these cards are referring back to indeed seasons and months as well, but they also refer back to a value in points. And in many games, there's, you know, the winner is the one that ends up with the highest score. What I love about them is not necessarily the possibility of using them in the same sense, you know, for the purpose that they have been created for, so to be played in those card games, but also because it gives you aesthetically, it gives you the possibility of using them. For example, I'm thinking with the answer deck that I've got, because it reminds me a lot of that kind of style, or other mini decks, or different decks that will definitely convey a different kind of divination system, if you know what I mean. So I really enjoy reading playing cards as if they were a divination kind of system. Or I really enjoy La Sibilla, for example, or you know, the cards of destiny, the deck of destiny, for example. So there are a lot of different divination systems, Lenormand, that I'm not necessarily showing you, but I do appreciate, and every now and then I actually use them or I study them. And I felt like, you know, playing is always part of using tarot as well. So the fact that these are playing cards doesn't exclude them from the possibility of reading into them. They do have a meaning that can actually be used as a keyword. The crane, for example, is the rebirth. So, and you can use that however you want. You can use it like an oracle, but you can use it definitely in a game. And I don't see a strong separation between tarot, oracles, and playing cards, because the part that we see of divination or introspection in the tarot decks comes from a gameful look at the cards, a playful look at the cards, if you know what I mean. So it's anything is originated by the will of human beings to actually have more knowledge, to gain more knowledge. And let me tell you that in evolutionary psychology, you will always hear that playing, both for humans and also for animals, is a way of learning. So you play certain things and you obviously enjoy them, and it's a joy for you, and it's a joy, I can assure you, also for animals. But the meaning of play is to teach you a lot of things that you will have to face in life. And so the fact that playing cards can be used, it's reflected that that concept is reflected in the fact that you can use playing cards also for divination, or I use them in that way, and I hear a lot of people does that too. So it's gonna be very interesting to start using this Hanafuda deck, you know, as if it were an oracle card. There's many different ones. I will put the link in the description box below if you want this particular publication, but there's so many. You just have to, you know, in the search bar, you have to type Hanafuda and you will have at least a dozen, if not more, listings. So that was it. And these are all of my Eastern inspired Japanese or Chinese decks. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, please put a like on this video or put a comment in the comment section below. I always enjoy interacting with the tarot community, and I always make sure to keep it a safe conversation for everyone to feel like they can share however much they want in there. It's something that I really pledge to you. And that was it for today. Have a great day.